Mr. Trump testifying this afternoon that his net worth was much higher than the financial statements in question. Before wrapping up testimony, the former president went on what people are calling another rant, attacking the judge and the trial, calling it, quote, election interference. Trump's daughter Ivanka is expected to be the next witness on the stand, and she's scheduled to testify on Wednesday. So let's bring in Rebecca Walser. She's a tax attorney and president of Walser Wealth Management. This lawsuit doesn't just include the former president. It's also including his two sons, because they took over the company once Trump became president. They're all saying, we didn't do this. It's our accountant who did this. How much does that say about someone who operates a business when, they're saying, I don't have anything to do with this, it's the accountant?
Well, I obviously don't think that cuts muster with the American public. The American public expects the business owner to understand the financials and to review the financials that any CPA prepares. So I think that it's difficult to put it into the perspective of it's just the accountant that did it and we didn't have any knowledge. The question is, what is the true misrepresentation of valuation? Because President Trump is still alluding to the fact that he's saying his net worth was not obfuscated and wasn't overstated, because he's clearly even saying today that it was more than what the financial statements reflect. You know, Carolyn, I don't know how much of an impact this is going to have on his businesses, because we saw a lot of information come out about Trump University in 2016 and 2020, both election cycles. And obviously, as you mentioned already, the businesses were turned over to the sons, and he stepped away from those as he went into the political arena. So I don't know how much additional impact this fraud trial is having on these businesses, but as far as the political impact, every time he's indicted or he's in trial, his poll numbers are going up, and his ability to raise funds continues to go up every time there's something else. So it's almost like the American people believe this is some sort of concerted effort across multiple different groups to persecute him, and a lot of his supporters are taking it that way and actually supporting him even more.
That being said, I want to lean on your experience as a tax attorney here to talk about Trump's defense. He is essentially accused of gaming the system here to get better terms on these loans from banks. He says it's no big deal because the banks ultimately paid their money. No one was physically hurt or harmed in this case, and that there were disclaimers on his financial statements. What do you make of the defense that he is using in this case?
Well, anytime you have a civil case, you have to establish damages. There usually there's not that fraud in and of itself has to have damages, but in order to award, to actually have something that's punitive that can be attached to the Trump organization, there normally is damages. So, but if you look at Paul Manafort, for example, in 2016, when all of Trump's sort of circular of friends were being investigated, Manafort was actually taken down by exactly this, by overstating financials on a mortgage application that was found to be fraudulent, and he actually did go and do jail time. So depending specifically on what we're trying to get, what the prosecution is trying to get as the remedy, would depend on what the actual damages are. So Trump basically stating that there are no damages, that there's no injured party, is basically him attesting to the fact that there's nothing for me to compensate anybody for, because all of these loans were actually settled correctly and paid off in full, and they weren't actually, there was nothing that came of, if this is actually fraudulent, there was nothing that came of it because the loans were actually paid in full. But that doesn't work always in a fraud case if you're going after jail time for someone who fraudulently misrepresented their financial statements.
So we know the stakes are high in this case, for sure, and a victory for the prosecution team could mean that Mr. Trump could be banned from doing business in New York. I feel like the name Trump is synonymous with New York and New York City. So not only that, but he would have to pay a huge fine. We're talking $250 million. A lot are saying this seems like an incredibly stiff penalty and maybe not justified. So how likely is all of this to happen?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a punitive penalty, especially in the event where you have someone who's saying there's no financial damages to any party. But again, we don't let fraud just go off on. I'm not saying that this, I'm not making an opinion of whether it is or isn't. I haven't seen the evidence, so I can't say. But if this is fraudulent, 250 seems punitive, and it seems like it is trying to, specifically go after and target a specific group to potentially make it difficult for them, like you said, to remain in the state, to do business in New York State. They're talking about revoking licenses, the ability to even get a business license in the state of New York. And you are right. The Trump name, as long as it's been in the city of New York, that would be a really very big situation to happen. And so, I'm not sure that this wasn't necessarily initially politically motivated, but like they saw with Manafort, that is where they had success in overstating financial statements. This is a very similar type of case with business records. And so I do see that if they're able to establish that, yes, that the financials were misrepresented and incorrectly reported, that it could be a problem.
Yeah,
for sure.
This seems like a case where, Trump is, of course, going to have that charge of it being politically motivated. But if there are receipts, there are receipts, and those will speak volumes at the end of the day.
Yeah. Tax attorney Rebecca Walser, thank you so much.